I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, it's Steph here. This is the Novelty Corner and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. This is the first one for January and it's kind of massive, so get a drink, get comfy, and hopefully this will not be forever long. But I did want to say that I do have a visitor with me for the morning. If you have not met him before, this is Benny. Benny is my parents' miniature poodle and he is a total teddy bear, and in a moment he's going to get very sick of me holding him and possibly just sit beside me. You want to say hello? Or are you just gonna sit here burying into me? Come on. Ugh. Oh my goodness. So this is Benny. He hates the camera and he hates that every time I see him I get the camera out and play with him. So we are going to talk about books. I'm going to let him do his thing. Thanks for the kisses. What are you going to do? I'm gonna come sit over here. All right, here's my little armrest down here. Okay, so given that this is the first Books Beside My Bed video for the year, I'm really interested in sort of how I present these going forward. So last week on my YouTube channel, I did put out a poll around people's thoughts about holding up physical books and also having the image on the screen. Most people said that they were happy with a mix of that. So that is fantastic. So thank you very much to everyone who did respond to that poll, and also a huge big thank you to all my new subscribers. I've had a bit of a jump in the last week, which is really exciting, so welcome. Typically what I do within a Books Beside My Bed video is give you the stats for the week. That includes the dates that I was reading between, the number of books I read, the number of pages, and my yearly reading total. What I am interested in is what sort of stats are you actually interested in moving forward. So if you're not interested in the page count or the number of books read per year, that's totally fine. Let me know down below. Genuinely, I want some feedback around that. But for today, I'm just going to keep my normal format. So if you are new here, this is what I generally do. And generally, you can let me know what works for you and what other things you might like to see. But yeah, let's jump into it. Okay, so this is my reading week from the 1st to the 8th of January. It was a slightly longer week because I decided to just start January fresh with its own Books Beside My Bed video. I read a total of 19 things, and before anyone freaks out, a huge number of these were either individual comic issues or kids books, which are a lot shorter. That said, I did read 3,909 pages because the last two books that I read this week were both over 600 pages long, and I was doing those for a buddy read. But I will talk a little bit more about those when I get to them. And obviously there's 19 books that I've read so far this year. All right, so I'm going to start off by talking about the kids books that I read. I'm not going to talk about these in depth because most of them either have an Instagram review or a blog review already up for them, and some of them are going to feature in a video later this month anyway. The two that are going to feature in a video coming out later in the month are books that were sent to me for review by Scholastic. They are picture books. There is Zoo School by Heath Mackenzie and also The Wild Guide to Starting School by Laura and Philip Bunting. Both of these books are about starting school. Our school year starts at the end of January here in Australia, so this is perfect release timing for these books. They're really fun. They're really bright, colourful, very funny stories, and they feature animals experiencing going to school, although Zoo School also does have some human characters in here as well. But there's going to be a special video about these books, so I will save my reviews for then. Another picture book that I read was Thunderstorm Dancing by Katrina Germain and Judy Watson. I've talked about this in a couple of videos, and this is a really gorgeous picture book about a family who is out near the beach and there's a thunderstorm, and the little girl is listening to the sounds that her family make during the thunderstorm to try and make it less scary. It's really gorgeous, very lyrical, a great little book. Thunderstorm Dancing I received from Allen and Unwin. I Broke the Internet by Andy McNabb is a middle grade title that I received for review from Scholastic. This is about Danny and a group of friends. Now there's another book in this and I'm not entirely certain if the events that sort of are mentioned in this book took place in the first book, but he and his friends are involved in some kind of skiing accident, and it's reported by the media, and then suddenly Danny is approached by a group that run a hotel in Norway, and it's an extreme sports hotel, and they want brave kids to come and test it all out as a promo thing. And Danny and his friends go along, as well as kids from another school, and it's a bit of a competition. This is definitely a book for those middle grade readers who really like action stories, who like silly plots and things constantly happening, because this moves very quickly. And I had no idea that Andy McNabb was writing middle grade books, but apparently he is. And then another book that I had for review, this one was sent to me by Allen and Unwin. This is The Young Oracle Tarot, an initiation into tarot's mystical wisdom. And this is pretty much what it says on the cover. It is a guidebook for tarot. It does feature an introduction to the history of tarot, the people who were involved, the timeline, and how things have evolved over the course of history. And then later on in the book, you also have information, quite detailed information about all of the cards in a tarot deck. And this is a really great book for anyone who's just starting out, particularly in their teens, if they want to know a little bit more and have a go at start practicing. So the first book I read was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Every year I start the year with a reread. So this is the 4th time that I've reread The Hating Game, and The Hating Game is coming out here in Australia on the 20th of January. I know the rest of the world has probably already seen it. At this stage, I'm tentatively planning to go and see this at the cinemas, assuming that the world doesn't implode here in Australia, which is currently on track for doing. But this is one of my favorite contemporary romance stories. I know it is super popular. There's a reason for that. It is incredibly engaging. This is about Lucy, who works in a small publishing house, and she is the assistant to one of the CEOs of the company. And this company is actually made up of 2 smaller companies that merge together in order for financial benefit. As such, the second CEO has an assistant called Josh. And Lucy and Josh, according to Lucy, can't stand each other. And this is an enemies to lovers office romance story. It has a sickbed scene. It has lots of forced proximity. It is super steamy. The chemistry between the 2 characters is fantastic and I adore it. I was really, really thrilled to start my year off rereading this. And I know a few other people who did that as well, because I was talking to them about it too. All right, then I read 2 issues of Nightwing. So I read Nightwing 85 and Nightwing 86. This is part of the Fear State series, I think. The only reason I picked these 2 up were because I had read somewhere that this is where they started rekindling the Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon romance in the Batverse, and they are my favorite pairing despite many, many things. So I got really excited and just decided to read these 2 issues. I should probably actually try and figure out exactly what's going on with Fear State, but to be perfectly honest, I really only want to follow these 2 characters. So I'm going to wait and see what comes out in the next couple of months and then work out how I'm going to proceed with the Batverse comics from there. After that, I read Silent Night by Evie Mitchell. This was a novella. Evie Mitchell is an Australian author who I absolutely adore. This one is very much a Ted Lasso fanfic. If you really like Killy and Roy, this is sort of just a love letter to them. So it is set during Christmas time. You have a princess called Charlotte who has just been left at the altar by her fiance. It's a big scandal, and she is spirited off away out of her small little country to get away from the media, and her family decide the best place to place her is with Croydon, who is a former bodyguard who is now living in Alaska. And so she's shipped off to Alaska to stay with Croydon, who puts the grumpy in grumpy sunshine, and then she finds out there's only one bed, and it's not quite snowed in, but there's that element of it in there, and it's just a really fun short read. I also read 2 graphic novels. So I read volume 1 of Fine Print by Stepan Sejic. I think I'm probably butchering that name, so I apologize. And this one I saw on Neverland Pixie's channel. So Tiffany was talking about it, and I saw her talking about it, and she was so enthusiastic about the way she was describing it. So I just couldn't help myself but to pick it up, because the artwork is incredible in this one. So this one is all about gods and sort of these paranormal mystical creatures like succubi and incubi. You have cupids, there's a whole lot of deal making going on. You feature multiple pairings in various couplings. To be honest, I was really immersed in the artwork. I found the story a little bit difficult to follow. I probably need to go back and read it again because there is so much happening. It is worth it alone for the artwork. I know that one of the main characters' names is Lauren, and she at one point is in a relationship. Then that relationship ends because she decides to go and pursue a career in modeling, and then that falls over, and then everything in her life sort of falls down. And it's about how she's trying to reclaim almost a sense of herself, but she is quite a selfish character in a way, and she ends up coming across a succubus and making a deal. And that's kind of where the story leaves off at the end of the first volume, is that she's just had these 2 demon-like, godlike characters turn up ready to grant her wish. So I am very intrigued to see where this goes, and will probably be continuing it at some point. And then following on from that, I read Punderworld Volume 1, which I've actually had for ages. And this is actually written by the wife of the previous author, and her name is Laura. And this is a Hades and Persephone retelling graphic novel. And again, the artwork is just gorgeous. And it has all those really gorgeous Hades and Persephone stories, you know, where Hades doesn't have the best relationship with Zeus, but he finds Persephone and he's just enamored with her. So I'm definitely going to be continuing this one. I love a good Hades and Persephone retelling. Then I read an anthology called Turn the Tide. This is a romantic suspense anthology. It featured 4 authors and 4 novellas. The various stories in here feature bounty hunters, CIA agents, spies, weird missions, etc. I picked it up because Adriana Anders' prequel novella to her, the Uncharted series is in this book, and I finally read it, and to be honest, that was my favourite novella in the series. I was so excited to read it and it did not disappoint. The stories in here are Any Means Necessary by Katie Ruggles, Deep Blue by Adriana Anders, again, my total favourite in this one, totally worth it. This one is set on an ocean rig and it's about a scientist who ends up getting caught up in a mysterious organisation's search for a virus, and she ends up being rescued by someone who she thinks is just the local fisherman. It's great. So this is sort of how the team in the Uncharted series, Survival Instincts, that's the series. So it's about how the team in Survival Instincts get their ocean rig base. So it's amazing. And there was also No Way Out by Juno Rushton and also Beyond Home by Connie Mann. So I may or may not look into the series by the other authors, but it's worth it alone for the story Deep Blue. Then I read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This is the Greek mythology retelling story of Ariadne. I picked this up in 2021 because I loved the cover. I still love the cover. It is absolutely gorgeous. I know that the US version is different, but I am in love with this one. It's told in various parts, and I have to say that the first part of the story was very meh for me. It was fine, but I was not overly invested in it. It does a lot of the setup work where Ariadne and her sister Phaedra are living in Crete. Their half-brother is the Minotaur in the labyrinth underneath the town, and her father is a tyrant ruler and he has demanded the sacrifice of children from other cities to be fed to the Minotaur in tournaments. And I think we start in the 3rd year when Theseus comes to Crete and is about to be sent into the labyrinth. Ariadne helps him because she begins to fall for him. She thinks he's amazing. He promises to take her away with him when they all escape, and then he ends up leaving her on an island. And to me, that's where the story really kicked off. It was really fascinating. I also liked the dynamic between Ariadne and her sister Phaedra and where they came from and where they end up and what their relationship is like as a result. Pretty much all of the men in this book can get in the bin, but that is not unsurprising in a Greek myth retelling. So I did really enjoy the last 2/3 of this book a lot more than the first third. So if you do pick it up and you find that the first part's a little bit slow, get through that first part, and the rest of the book was a lot more engaging in terms of page turning. So this was a surprisingly good read for me. I read Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shauna Maguire. This is the next book in the Wayward Children series. I think it's book 7 or 8 or something like that. And this book it's a novella. This I should have loved because it has everything I would normally adore, because our main character Cora starts off at Eleanor West's school for wayward children. Cora is determined to beat herself up over the fact that she can't return through her portal doorway, and she asks to be transferred to basically the dark side version of Eleanor West's school. And Eleanor tries to warn her that, you know, the school is different. Once you go there, they will not let you go. But Cora wants that. She wants to forget about her doorway. And so she goes, and then she quickly realizes that she's probably made a mistake. Like almost within seconds of walking in the door, she's gone, no, I shouldn't have done this. The school is designed basically to beat down all of those kids who had portal doorways and to make them forget. There was just something about this that rubbed me the wrong way. Like the concept itself, I should have loved because it is exactly the kind of thing that I would like. But yeah, it just didn't grip me at all. I said when I hauled this, which I think is coming out later this week, that I didn't know whether I was going to continue this series. I'm still sort of uncertain. I'm interested to see what the premise is for the next book, but I'm not convinced that I'm going to continue it. I don't know, the last couple of books have sort of not been my favourite. Then I read another novella by Katie Robert. This was Stonehearts, and this was released on her Patreon, so I don't know if there's any information about it anywhere else at the moment. And this is a Calypso and Medusa story, and it's set in the same world as her Dark Olympus series, but it's not part of the traditionally published books. It's going to be independently published, and I think it may be coming out in March. This is a sapphic novella. Medusa is an assassin, and she's sent to kill Calypso, and Calypso is the mistress of one of the 13 of Olympus, and I've mentally forgotten who it was. Medusa is sent to kill her and ends up spying on her and being outsmarted by Calypso. And the whole thing is really fascinating, and I loved the dynamic between these two characters. It's Katie Robert, and I think she's doing some really interesting and amazing work in this space, so I was really grateful to be able to read this in January because it was really enjoyable. I also read Sink or Swim by Annabeth Albert. This is a review copy that I received from NetGalley. It is coming out in February, and it is the next book in her Shore Leave series, so it's Shore Leave Book 2. This is an military romance series. In this series, she's focusing on members of the military who work on submarines. So we have Chief Calder Euler, who was working on a submarine, but he was injured and has been working on the shore for a period of time until doctors clear him to go back to work on a submarine. And he really likes to play cards, he likes to win, and he's very competitive. He comes from a big family, and his younger brother was one of the main characters in the first book. And at the beginning of the book, we find out that he has won a cabin in a card game. And so he's driving up to this cabin and he's really excited about it. It's the biggest thing he's ever won. And he gets there, and then a man and two young girls walk in. And they're all very shocked to see each other. The other man, who turns out to be a psychologist called Felix, is actually the former husband of the man that Calder won the cabin from in the card game. Felix and his former husband are divorced, and the proceedings were messy, and his former husband had absolutely no right to bet the cabin because it didn't belong to him. It had been awarded to Felix in the settlement. They're trying to sort out this messy situation, and then they get snowed in, and so you have a snowed in forced proximity situation. Honestly, the story was just delightful as these two characters really get to know each other. And also Felix's kids, Madeline and Charlotte, who are actually his nieces, but their parents were killed, and so he was awarded guardianship of them. They are fantastic. Charlotte is the funniest kid I have read in a book in a long time, because she's just that younger sibling who is interested in everything weird and gross and fascinating, and she just randomly spits out facts to freak people out the whole way through the book, and it's great. Anyway, as the story goes on, these two have to decide whether or not to act on their feelings towards one another, and then also how to navigate their changing feelings on their own lives, because Calder is trying to get back onto a sub, but suddenly he's beginning to think, well, maybe that's not the next progression in my career, but what does that mean if I don't go back to that, because that's all I've known. So there's lots of really fascinating things going on in this book. And then I read the most bonkers book that I think I have ever read, and that it was Her Donut Shifters by Mia Harlan. And as soon as I saw this title, I had to share it with the group that I buddy read weird romances with, and Bree saw it and then put it in her members Discord group. And then we all ended up reading it because it is a 27-page short story about donut shifters. Look, I probably couldn't even give you a proper synopsis of the story because it's just insane. And to be perfectly honest, if you want something weird and wacky, just go in and read it blind. But what I will say is that it is ridiculous and silly, and I laughed so hard, and there were a couple of us who were buddy reading it at the same time in the Discord group. It only took us, like 15 minutes, and I was dying of laughter. I'm sure there's something out there that's weirder than that, but my goodness, it was weird. All right, and then we come to my last two buddy reads for the week, and I read these both with Kirsty from Melbourne on My Mind on Instagram. I'll leave her link down below. We decided to buddy read some Matthew Riley books. Now, Matthew Riley is an author who I have been reading for 2 decades. Look, do his books have problematic things in them? 100% yes. Are they still engaging and fast-paced reads despite the fact that they're all over 600 pages long? Yeah, they really are. The first one I read is Ice Station. This wasn't his first published book. It was his second published book after Contest. This was the first book that I ever read from him when I was in Year 9 in high school, and it is about a small US-based Antarctic ice station, and they are doing ice core drilling, and they hit metal, I forget how many feet it is below the surface of the ice, but the ice core samples are thousands and thousands of years old, and they hit metal. And so everyone freaks out, and they send out a message going, look, we think we've hit metal. And of course their message is intercepted by a whole bunch of people who are fascinated because they think, oh, it's got to be alien, right? Anyway, so various countries send out people to try and take control of the station. And one of the groups that is sent out is a Marine Force Recon group headed by Scarecrow. And this is the first book in the Scarecrow series. And so Scarecrow is a relatively young lieutenant, and he and his team go to secure the station to keep the scientists safe and basically hold it until the next group turns up. But when they get there, they find out that there is a French force that has already infiltrated the base, and then things go to hell in a handbasket very, very quickly. This series has some of my favorite characters. I love Scarecrow, I love Fox, I love Rebound and Mother. Mother is a delight. She is an absolute delight of a character. You also have a kid in this book, Kirsty, who is fantastic, and Kirsty has a pet Antarctic fur seal, and Wendy is also amazing. Wendy could have her own book, and I would be totally fine with that. This involves a lot of fight sequences. There is a lot of blood, gore, violent death sequences. So if that is not your thing, totally skip it. There's a lot of diving below the surface of the ocean. So if you're claustrophobic, possibly not the best one to read either, but it is non-stop action from start to finish. Like, it does not let up. This is not a book that you start and then put down. It's a book that you start and you keep reading till you get to the end. And then we decided we wanted to buddy read another book the next night by Matthew Riley, and we went with Temple, which is actually a standalone book of his, and this one is set in the jungles of Peru. It is about a linguist who is recruited to help translate a manuscript that supposedly tells the story of how to obtain this Incan idol that is made from a meteorite that fell to Earth. And this meteorite has properties that lots of groups around the world are trying to get a hold of because they want to build a super weapon, because of course they do. So this one, a bit like Ice Station, has action from start to finish. We also have moments where we're in the present day, but also when Will Grace, who is a linguist in this, is translating the document. So we're reading about the story of the main characters from the past, about where, how and why they hid this idol. You also have some really terrifying big cats in the story that want to eat everyone, lots of black caimans. You have battles in the forest, you have battles on the river, you have some incredible sequences with planes and speedboats and bigger planes. I don't know. Guys, I've been talking for nearly 45 minutes. my words are gone. Anyway, they're a wild ride, but as I said, these books are fairly dated. They came out in the late 90s, and there are going to be some problematic elements in here, some of which are addressed, some of which are not. If you like an action movie in a book, these two are the books to pick up. All right, so those are the books that I read in the first week of January. Yay for holidays. Also, you know, I'm stuck at home because the outside world, to quote The Little Mermaid, it's a mess. I'm not going out there. And because of the length of this video, Benny is asleep. There he is. He could not care less about the fact that I'm filming a video. Thank you very much for watching this video, particularly if you stuck around all the way to the end. In the comments, I would love to know what you have been reading in the first part of January. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, leave your favorite colored heart emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.